Thank you. Question number 3, Alison Johnstone.
No means we stay in. We're members of the European Union. This is what Ruth Davidson told Patrick Harvey and The Nation during a TV debate in 2014. Now we're a fortnight away from losing our status and rights as EU citizens. Our EU friends and neighbours here are fearing for their futures. Our children are denied the right to move, live, work and love in 27 other countries. We're denied the right to have a say in our future. Does the First Minister agree with me that the people of Scotland deserve so much better? And can she tell us how her government will use the powers it has to stand against this assault on our rights?
First Minister.
Yes, I agree that Scotland deserves so much better than a Conservative government ripping us out of the European Union against our will. And I don't just believe that we deserve better, I believe we could have much better if we were an independent country able to cooperate in the European Union in our own right. The Scottish Government will use all of the powers at our disposal to mitigate the impact of Brexit, as we have been doing, for example, to provide support and advice to European nationals who have been treated utterly shamefully by this UK government, and we will continue to look at every way in which we can do that. But of course, Scotland deserves the right to decide its own future. And there's a really fundamental issue at stake right now in Scotland, and it's not actually about whether or not Scotland should be independent. It's about who gets to decide. Should that be the Scottish people, or should that be Westminster? And it's also about whether the outcome of the general election is respected in Scotland, as the Tories rightly demand that it is respected elsewhere in the UK. The Conservatives, of course, are running scared of Scotland having that choice, and I can understand why, but they will not stop it. Democracy denial will not prevail, but the longer the Tories and perhaps others in this chamber persevere with the attempt to deny democracy, the more certain it becomes that Scotland will be an independent country.
Alison Johnstone.
The First Minister will share my concerns that we'll no longer be able to rely on the EU for access to environmental justice. It's clear that Brexit is being used by the Tories to roll back on workers' rights and environmental standards. Let's not forget that the EU gave us so many of the protections we take for granted today. Sadly, the Tories have thrown out guarantees that these will be maintained in the withdrawal bill. They even used the bill to grab further powers from this Scottish Parliament, all because they are desperate for a Trump trade deal. These actions are a clear statement of their intent. We in Scotland must do everything we can to protect people and our environment. Until we rejoin the EU as an independent nation, will the First Minister protect our access to environmental justice and establish Scotland's own environmental court?
First Minister.
We will absolutely make sure that environmental standards, as far as we have control over it, are not in any way diminished. If anything, we want to go further. We absolutely do not want a race to the bottom. We are in the process, of course, right now of considering and deciding how we replace the environmental governance that will be lost from leaving the European Union. And of course, we listen carefully to the representations around the detail of that are being made. But this race to the bottom is a real concern. I met as part of my regular meetings with the STUC yesterday. They fear a race to the bottom on workers' rights. We could face a race to the bottom on consumer protections as well as environmental protections, on general standards of regulation. And, you know, the Tories are obviously intensely uncomfortable as this is being discussed right now, but there are Tories everywhere talking about the benefits of Brexit are all about being able to reduce that regulatory protection. So these are real fears, and we will do everything we can within our existing powers to protect Scotland against that. But the best way for Scotland to protect itself is to stop being at the mercy of Westminster governments, particularly Westminster Tory governments, and to have the right to choose a better future. I'm reminded of the leaflet, one of many leaflets on this issue that the Tories issued during the general election campaign. It said, I think it was one of the last ones, "On Thursday you will decide," they said to the Scottish people, "whether or not there will be an independence referendum. The only way to stop it is to vote Scottish Conservative in Scotland." Well, Scotland didn't vote Scottish Conservative. They put the issue on the ballot paper. They lost. It's time to give Scotland a chance to choose our own future.
We have some